Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My girlfriend's friends laughed, and the sound felt like it bounced off the glass and polished wood of the restaurant. "Why does he dress like a broken turn?" one of them said, not even bothering to lower her voice. My girlfriend, Serena, glanced at me, then looked away and actually smiled at the joke. I lifted my beer to my lips, took a slow sip, and let the words slide over me like cold water. In that moment, I decided not to flinch. I just looked at Serena, nodded as if I had heard something mildly amusing, and said, "Got it." I stood there in my thrift store blazer and well-worn shoes, feeling the room, feeling my stomach tighten, and realizing this Christmas party might be the night everything finally came into focus. My name is Kendrick, and I am 32 years old. I had been with Serena, who is 29 years old, for about 18 months at that point. We met through mutual friends at a small birthday dinner in downtown Seattle. She worked in social media marketing and introduced herself with an easy smile and a quick joke about how her entire job was making ordinary moments look more glamorous than they really were. At first, she seemed down to earth. She loved cheap taco places, did not mind taking the bus, and laughed at her own clumsiness when she tripped over uneven sidewalks. From the outside, we looked like a typical couple just trying to make it in an expensive city. There was one thing Serena did not know about me, something I did not really tell anyone. 3 years earlier, I had sold my artificial intelligence startup for more money than I had ever imagined I would see in my lifetime. The acquisition had been quiet, mostly inside the technology world, but it was enough that I would never have to work again if I did not want to. I signed the papers in a conference room that smelled like coffee and dry erase markers, walked out into a cold Seattle afternoon, and felt completely numb. People imagine that much money feels like winning the lottery. For me, it felt like inheriting a family curse. My fear came from watching money destroy my parents' marriage. My father built his own success in technology during the 1990s, back when the internet felt wild and full of possibility. Almost overnight, people started treating him differently. Family friends who had never called suddenly wanted to grab lunch. Relatives appeared with business ideas and emergencies that always needed cash. My mother began spending like wealth itself was a personality trait, hosting parties designed to showcase what we owned rather than who we were. By the time they divorced, I could not tell who actually cared about my father versus who cared about his investment portfolio. I learned early that money changes the way people look at you, and not always in ways that feel human. So when my own company was acquired, I made a deliberate choice. I kept living like a regular person. I stayed in my 8-year-old Subaru instead of buying a foreign luxury car. I renewed my lease on a modest one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill that cost $1,800 a month. I bought clothes from thrift stores and Target, wore the same dark jeans to most social events, and used a cracked phone case until it finally gave out. My idea was simple. If someone chose me while I looked like just another overworked Seattle technology worker scraping by, then maybe I could trust that they saw me, not my balance sheet. Serena seemed perfect for that test at the beginning. She did not push for expensive restaurants. She happily split Taco Bell receipts and Venmo requests for groceries. Our early dates were simple. Walks around Green Lake, cheap movie nights, cooking pasta together in my small kitchen while she played old rhythm and blues songs from a playlist on her phone. She talked about wanting a partner, not a provider. "I do not need anyone to save me," she said once as we walked past a row of glossy car dealerships. "I just want someone who shows up." At the time, I believed her. The change began when Serena's social circle started tightening around us like a belt pulled one notch too far. Her closest friends, Tanisha and Shanice, were loud, confident, and always dressed in designer pieces that caught the light. Tanisha worked in investment banking and would not stop talking about her boyfriend's salary, how his bonuses came in, what he really should be earning. Shanice had married a surgeon, Damon, and she treated his career like a trophy. Every brunch turned into a scoreboard. Who had the better apartment? Whose partner drove the nicer car? Whose vacation photos got the most engagement? Slowly, without anyone saying it directly, I started failing their tests. One evening a few months before the Christmas party, Serena and I were sitting at my kitchen table with a grocery flyer spread between us. We were planning meals for the week and arguing over whether to buy the store brand or the organic version of something. Serena sighed, tossed her pen down, and said, "Why do we live like college students?" Me and Shanice were talking about Napa last week. She and Damon just got back from a wine tour. Meanwhile, we are over here splitting grocery costs and using coupons. I tried to keep my voice calm when I answered. "We could go somewhere nice sometimes," I said. "Money is not really the issue." She frowned and shook her head. "You work for some tiny consulting firm, Kendrick. Be serious. We cannot pretend we are in the same world as they are." I told her that I did all right, that my financial situation was more comfortable than it looked, but she had already made up her mind about what my life looked like from the outside. To Serena, I was the guy with the old car, the average apartment, and the habit of checking prices. Her friends reinforced that image at every gathering. At a birthday dinner, Tanisha leaned across the table and said, "When are you going to upgrade this man's wardrobe, Serena? He is sweet, but he looks like he is still interning." They laughed. Serena laughed too. I smiled along, but there was a slow, steady ache growing in my chest that I pretended not to notice. The invitation to Serena's marketing agency Christmas party arrived in early December, printed on heavy paper with silver lettering. She showed it to me like it was a test she needed me to pass. "It is at this upscale restaurant in Belltown," she said. "A lot of important people are going to be there. Clients, partners, directors. I really want you to come." I agreed, partly because I wanted to support her, partly because I wanted to see how far this performance would go. In the days leading up to the party, she gently suggested I wear something a little sharper. I bought a simple navy blazer from a discount rack and polished my old shoes in my living room, staring at the faint cracks in the leather. On the night of the party, the Uber ride over felt tighter than the interior of the car. Serena sat with her hands clasped around a small clutch purse, looking out the window at the city lights. Finally, she turned to me and said, "Just try to fit in, okay? These people matter for my career. Please do not be weird about money or work." I wanted to ask her what weird meant, but instead I said, "I will be polite. I promise." She nodded, but there was a tension in her jaw that did not relax, even when we stepped out onto the sidewalk and the restaurant's warm light washed over us. The party was exactly what I expected. Young professionals in carefully chosen outfits, laughing just a little too loudly, networking as if the whole event were a live audition. People stood in small clusters discussing year-end bonuses, international vacations, and the best ski resorts. Serena immediately gravitated toward her work friends, pulling me along by the hand as if I were an accessory. "This is Kendrick," she said a few times, adding nothing else, as if my presence were a footnote. I told myself to relax, to be the supportive partner, to nod and listen and refill our glasses when needed. That was when the commentary started. We were standing near the bar when Tanisha arrived in a fitted dress that drew several glances. She looked me up and down with a small, assessing smile, then turned to Serena. "Girl, when are you going to upgrade?" she said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "My boyfriend just bought me a Cartier watch for Christmas." "What did Kendra get you?" Before I could answer, Serena laughed and shrugged. "He is sweet," she said, "but yeah, he is not exactly playing in the same league." The words landed like a slap I had to pretend not to feel. I stood there holding my beer, watching the woman I had been building a life with dismiss me as a consolation prize in front of her friends. The moment stretched out, but it did not end there. Shanice leaned in, swirling her wine. "Honestly, Serena, you could do so much better," she said. "There are actual successful men in this city. You are settling for someone with no ambition." Serena's eyes flashed with something like enjoyment. "Maybe I should find someone who can actually afford to take me places," she said, warming to the role. "Someone with real goals." The worst part was not what they said about my bank account. It was watching Serena agree with every word. Inside my chest, something quiet snapped. The version of me they were mocking was the version I had chosen to show them, the simple one, the modest one. I had thought that simplicity would reveal their character. Now I was watching the results in real time. I let my gaze drift around the restaurant, wondering how much longer I needed to stay before I could leave without making a scene. I was seriously considering walking out, just putting my drink down and heading for the door when something happened that none of us saw coming. The restaurant grew noticeably quieter near the entrance, the way a room changes when someone important walks in. Conversations faltered. People turned their heads. I followed their gaze and saw Lennox Grant walk in with his usual small entourage. Lennox was the chief executive officer of one of Seattle's biggest technology companies, a man whose name showed up in technology news feeds and business magazines. For the past few months, he and I have been working on a partnership for my new venture. In person, he was surprisingly relaxed, but there was no mistaking the gravity that followed him into a room. Lennox let his eyes sweep across the crowd. For a second, it looked like he was searching for someone, and then his face lit up when he spotted me near the bar. "There is the genius I have been looking for," he called out, his voice cutting through the background music as he walked straight toward our table. "Kendrick, perfect timing. Are you ready to change the world again?" The conversation at our little cluster stopped instantly. Serena and her friends stared at me as if they had never actually seen me before in their lives. I put my beer down and extended my hand. "Good to see you, Lennox," I said, doing my best to keep my tone casual. "I'm just here enjoying a Christmas party. How is your family?" He clasped my hand with both of his and smiled. "They are great," he said. "Listen, I just got off the phone with our board about the partnership. They are all in on the $200 million. Your track record speaks for itself. That artificial intelligence exit you pulled off was brilliant, and now this new platform, you're going to revolutionize the entire industry." Around us, people fell into a hush, pretending not to listen while very much listening. I could feel Serena's stare burning into the side of my face, but I kept my attention on Lennox. "We should probably discuss details somewhere more private soon," I said. He nodded eagerly. "Of course," he said. "I just had to tell you this in person. Our investors are calling you the next Elon. After selling your first company for $40 million, and now this, you're going to be the story everyone talks about this year." That sentence detached itself from the conversation and floated over our table like a flare exploding in a dark sky. Tanisha froze with her glass halfway to her lips. Shanice's eyes widened in open disbelief, as if she were trying to do the mathematics in her head and failing. Serena looked like someone had kicked a chair out from under her. The same man they had been mocking as a broken turn was suddenly a person who could buy and sell everyone in that room without blinking. Lennox and I talked for a few more minutes about timelines, legal teams, and a possible interview with Forbes magazine. Then he clapped me on the shoulder and drifted away to greet the next cluster of people. The moment he left, the air around our table changed temperature. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Serena grabbed my arm, her nails digging slightly into my sleeve. "Oh my God, babe. Why did you not tell me any of that?" she said. Her voice had gone soft and breathy, the way it did when she wanted to charm someone. "We were just joking around. I think you were amazing." Tanisha stepped closer, her earlier smirk replaced by bright curiosity. "So, Kendrick, tell us about your work," she said. "What kind of companies have you built? How did you get into artificial intelligence?" Shanice nodded eagerly, asking about my fascinating career trajectory. 10 minutes earlier, they had been encouraging Serena to leave me for someone with real goals. Now they were hanging on every word I said, laughing too quickly at my jokes, touching my arm when they made a point, asking if I ever mentored younger entrepreneurs. I felt as if I were watching a play in which everyone had abruptly switched roles without changing costumes. Inside me, something settled into place. These people did not suddenly respect me because they had discovered my character. They respected my bank account. The version of me they had mocked had not changed. Only their perception of what I could do for them had shifted. "I think I'm going to head home," I told Serena quietly when there was a gap in the questions. She blinked in surprise. "What?" "No, stay," she said quickly. "Everyone wants to meet you now. This is huge for my team. They're going to be talking about you for weeks." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. Everyone wanted to meet me now. I had been standing in the same blazer, the same shoes, the same skin all evening. The only new information in the room was the number attached to my name. I stepped out into the cold night air and ordered an Uber on my phone. As I waited on the sidewalk, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted through the restaurant's windows. My reflection in the glass looked both familiar and slightly unreal. The man in thrift store clothes with a secret that had just been dragged into the open. On the ride home, the driver chatted about holiday traffic, but I barely heard him. I replayed Serena's laugh, the way her eyes had sparkled when she joked about finding someone with real goals, and the way those same eyes had shifted once Lennox spoke my net worth aloud. When I got back to my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed with my blazer still on. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. Serena's name lit up the screen over and over. At first the messages were confused. Why did you leave? And, are you upset? Then they turned accusatory. You lied to me about your job. And, how could you keep something that big from me? Later, they slid toward panic. We need to talk about this. And please answer me. I let the phone buzz itself into silence. I needed space from her voice, from the frantic shift in tone, from the feeling that I was a stock whose price had suddenly spiked. The next day, I finally agreed to meet her. We sat in my living room, the afternoon light slanting through half-closed blinds. Serena looked different without the party makeup and the perfect hair, but the anxiety in her eyes was the same. Why would you hide something like that from me? She demanded. Do you have any idea how it felt to stand there and realize everyone in that room knew more about your life than I did? I took a breath. They did not know more, I said. They knew a different part. The part one deliberately kept quiet, because I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I was ordinary. She shook her head. You made me look stupid, she said. I have been defending your little consulting job to my friends for months. If I had known, I would have handled things differently. Something in that sentence made my skin prickle. What would you have handled differently? I asked. She paused only a moment. I would not have joked like that in front of them, she said. I would have shut it down. I would have made sure they respected you. I studied her face. You would have made sure they respected me because you knew I had money, I said. But why did you not make sure they respected me when you thought I did not? Serena leaned back, crossing her arms. You are being too sensitive about harmless teasing, she said. That is just how we talk. We push each other. I was motivating you to reach your potential. You drive an old car, Kendrick. You live in a small apartment. I wanted more for us. The thing that struck me most was that she believed what she was saying. In her mind, mocking my lifestyle had been a form of encouragement. The idea that I might have chosen modesty on purpose, that I might measure success by something other than square footage and car models, simply did not compute. Over the next few days, our social world shifted in small but unmistakable ways. Tanisha, who had spent months making casual digs about my supposed dead-end job, suddenly wanted to grab coffee to pick my brain about technology and finance. She sent long messages asking if I had advice for her younger cousin who wanted to start a company. Shanice began inviting us to dinner parties with couples she called movers and shakers, eager to introduce me as Serena's boyfriend, the entrepreneur. They emphasized the word as if it were a royal title. I went to one dinner out of curiosity. At the table, every question they asked me had a price tag attached. Do you invest? Do you know anyone at this firm? Do you think this startup is going somewhere? One evening, Serena and I were having lunch at a small cafe near her office, 3 days after the party. She was in a bright blouse, scrolling through real estate listings on her phone between bites of salad. We should move in together, she said suddenly. Maybe look at condos in Belltown. Now that I understand your actual situation, we can start building something real. I set my fork down. What is different now? I asked. She blinked. What do you mean? I held her gaze. What is different about me now compared to 3 days ago? Same job, same apartment, same car, same habits. What changed? She opened and closed her mouth like she was searching for a script. Serena started talking about trust and communication and how relationships evolve. She said things like, now that we're being honest with each other, and we could dream bigger together. But she never answered the question. If she wanted a future now, why had she not wanted one when she thought I was just another regular guy trying to pay his bills? That silence told me more than any of her explanations. On my walk home, I realized the test I thought I had designed for other people had also become a test for me. I had to decide whether I believed my own values strongly enough to walk away from someone who could not share them. I talked to my father on the phone that night, pacing my living room while the city glowed outside my window. I told him what had happened at the party, how Lennox had revealed everything, how Serena and her friends had changed in an instant. My father was quiet for a long moment. You know what that reminds me of, he finally said. Every holiday after my company took off, people who never cared about my opinions suddenly hung on my every word. It felt good at first. Then I realized they were listening to my money, not to me. He paused. You did not hide your wealth to punish anyone. You did it to protect yourself. Now you have more information. A few days later, Serena came over with a list of open houses on her phone and a bright, determined smile. She talked a mile a minute about floor-to-ceiling windows, building amenities, and how it would look for her to host colleagues at our place. I listened for a while, then finally interrupted. "I'm not moving," I said. She blinked. "What?" I gestured around my small living room. "I like this apartment," I said. "I like this neighborhood. I like keeping my life simple." She stared at me as if I were speaking a language she did not know. "Do you not want people to see how successful you are?" she asked. That question landed between us like a stone. That was the moment I knew we were done. She was dating my success, not me. We tried, for about 2 more weeks, to patch something that had never really been whole. She suggested couples therapy. She cried and said she had never meant to hurt me. She insisted her friends' opinions did not matter, even though she had let those opinions guide our relationship for months. Every conversation felt like she was talking to the wealthy version of me that had been announced at the party, the man with the $40 million exit and the new platform, not the person who wore secondhand jackets and spent quiet nights debugging code for fun. Eventually, I said the words out loud. "We want different things. This is not going to work." The breakup itself was quiet. No shouting, no dramatic scene in public. We sat on a park bench under bare winter trees while our breath formed pale clouds in the cold air. Serena cried into her gloved hands, asking if there was anything she could do to change my mind. I told her I did not think she had done anything she could easily fix. It was not about an apology for one night. It was about values. She wanted a life measured in visible markers: homes, parties, vacations, the admiration of friends. I wanted a life where the person beside me cared more about who I was at my most ordinary than who I could be at my most impressive. After that, the social fallout unfolded at a distance. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Serena had been bragging to her friends about dating a secret millionaire, using my story as a kind of social currency. When we broke up, she lost that currency. Tanisha and Shanice went back to their subtle digs. Only now they had even more material. They criticized Serena's choices and wondered how she had managed to lose someone like me. I actually felt bad about that part. She did not deserve to be mocked by her own friends, even if those friends had revealed their true colors at that Christmas party. Professionally, life moved forward. The partnership with Linux's company launched 3 months later, and our platform performed better than projected. The interview with Forbes magazine happened in a glossy conference room with bottled water and soft chairs. I answered questions about innovation, leadership, and the future of artificial intelligence, and the article painted me as some kind of quiet visionary. It felt surreal, but not nearly as important as something else I had been doing quietly in the background for years: volunteering at an elementary school in South Seattle. I started volunteering long before my company sold, back when I was just another programmer who wanted to give something back. Every Tuesday afternoon, I drove down to a public school and helped children with basic computer skills. We worked on simple coding projects, digital drawing, and typing. The students did not know or care that I had money. They just knew I showed up every week, remembered their names, and high-fived them when their programs finally ran without errors. Those afternoons grounded me in a way nothing else did. In that fluorescent-lit computer lab, I was not a founder or an entrepreneur. I was just Mr. Kendrick who made the cursor move across the screen. That is where I met Alana. She was a third-grade teacher who had been working at the school for 6 years. She grew up in the neighborhood, went to college on scholarships, and came back because she wanted to make a difference where she had started. The first time we spoke, she was kneeling beside a student's desk, helping a little boy sound out a word on the screen. When she stood, she smiled at me and said, "Thank you for sticking with them. They could be a handful on computers." I laughed. "Honestly, they are better at this than some people I have hired," I said. She grinned, and the conversation flowed naturally from there. After a few weeks, Alana and I fell into an easy rhythm. On Tuesdays, she would help settle the children into the computer lab, then lean against a desk while I explained loops and basic logic in terms that 8-year-olds could understand. Afterwards, we started grabbing coffee at a small shop around the corner. At first, we talked about lesson plans and technology, about how to make sure children who did not have devices at home could still keep up. Then the conversations stretched wider. She told me about growing up with parents who worked 2 jobs each, about teachers who had changed her life. I told her about early jobs in technology, about writing code at 2 in the morning, about wanting to build tools that felt genuinely useful. Alana knew I worked in technology, but she had no idea about the money, the acquisition, or the partnership with Linux. She never asked what car I drove or where I lived. When she asked about my work, it was always framed in terms of impact. How does what you build help people who are not in the room? She would say, stirring sugar in her coffee. I found myself looking forward to those questions more than to any investor meeting. One afternoon, as we walked back to the school, she said, I like that you explain things to the kids without talking down to them. A lot of adults forget how smart they are. I tucked that compliment away in a place that Serena's laughter had never reached. 3 months into our slow, quiet friendship, one of Alana's students walked into the computer lab holding a folded newspaper. Ms. Alana, is this Mr. Kendrick? The girl asked, pointing at a black and white photo on the front of the business section. It was the Forbes article. Alana glanced at it, then looked at me with raised eyebrows. After class, when the last child had filed out, she held up the paper. So, she said with a small smile, is there anything you want to tell me? I exhaled and decided I was done hiding out habit. We sat at a table while I told her the whole story in a low voice. I talked about the startup, the unexpected acquisition, the choice to live modestly, and the way I had watched money distort my parents' marriage. I told her about Serena, the Christmas party, Lennox's entrance, the sudden shift in everyone's behavior, and the breakup that followed. I did not leave out the parts where I had been wrong. The arrogance of thinking I could design a perfect test for other people, the fear that it kept me from being honest, even with someone I had been dating for more than a year. When I finished, I expected at least a few questions about numbers or possessions. Instead, Alana leaned back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. That explains why you actually understand how to build sustainable programs instead of just throwing money at problems, she said finally. It makes sense now why you ask so many questions about long-term support before you offer anything. She did not ask how much I was worth or what else I owned. She did not change the way she spoke to me. The only thing that shifted was the way she connected my resources to the work we were already doing together. It was as if she had simply discovered that my toolbox was bigger than she thought. About a week later, I asked Alana if she wanted to have dinner somewhere that did not serve food on plastic trays. She laughed and said yes. Our first official date was at a small, family-owned restaurant a few blocks from the school. We sat in a corner booth and talked until the staff began stacking chairs. We did not order the most expensive things on the menu. We did not post any photos. She never once asked what else I could afford. Over the next 2 months, we kept seeing each other. Sometimes we went to bookstores or walked along the waterfront. Sometimes we just ate takeout on my couch while she graded papers and I cleaned up stray crumbs from my keyboard. One evening, after a long volunteer session, I told her I wanted to help fund a computer lab at the school. I can cover new machines, updated software, even some after-school programs, I said. She did not clap or squeal or talk about how generous I was. Instead, she nodded slowly and said, if we do this, I want you to understand exactly how the money will be used. We need a plan for maintenance, training, and what happens after the first few years. Otherwise, it will just become another broken room that children walk past. We sat down with the principal and drafted a plan that focused on outcomes, not optics. Around the start of winter, the school's heating system broke. Suddenly, children were sitting in classrooms wearing coats and gloves, blowing into their hands, and trying to focus while their teeth chattered. The district did not have emergency funds, and every day that passed made the problem feel heavier. I watched Alana's shoulders tighten more each afternoon as she described sending children home early or moving them into the few rooms that still had heat. One night, after she fell asleep on my couch with a stack of worksheets on her lap, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I could have written a check in my own name, but I knew Alana well enough to understand that she might feel uncomfortable being directly connected to such a large donation. So I structured the money as an anonymous gift through a small foundation I had set up for exactly this kind of situation. Within a week, contractors were in the building, replacing old pipes and repairing ancient units. The principal called an emergency staff meeting and announced that they had received unexpected funding to fix the heating system. Teachers cheered. Some of them wiped their eyes. I watched from the back of the room, leaning against the wall. Alana cried during that meeting. Not because someone with money had swooped in dramatically, but because her students would no longer have to shiver through math lessons. That night, she and I sat in her small kitchen while she stirred a pot of soup on the stove. It was one of the most beautiful things I have seen, she said quietly. A A community coming together to make sure children are not forgotten. Whoever that donor was, they care enough to act quickly. I want to tell her it had been me, but I kept the words behind my teeth. It felt better simply to sit there, listening to her talk about her students' relief. Weeks passed. The new heating system worked. The computer lab plan moved forward. Children who had once hesitated to touch a keyboard were now arguing about how to fix each other's code. Alana kept treating me exactly the way she had before she knew about my net worth. When she teased me, it was about how long I took to choose a sandwich or how I always forgot where I set my keys, not about my car or my apartment. When she praised me, it was for showing up every Tuesday, even when I was tired, or for spending 3 hours helping a child debug a stubborn loop. Sometimes, on quiet nights, my mind drifted back to Serena and that Christmas party. I remember the cold air on the sidewalk, the sharp taste of beer, the moment Lennox said the number out loud. I remember the way Serena's posture straightened when she realized what I was worth, and the way her friends suddenly leaned in. I also remembered Celestia, the restaurant manager from that night, who had walked over after Lennox left and quietly asked if I was all right. Rich or not, being put on the spot like that looked rough, she had said, setting a glass of water in front of me. She had no reason to care about my feelings except basic human decency. At the time, I had not fully understood how much that small kindness mattered. Standing in the school computer lab now, watching a child's face light up when their project finally worked, I finally understood what I had been looking for all along. Some people treat you based on what they think you can do for them. Others treat you like a human being whose worth does not rise and fall with your bank balance. Serena had loved the idea of me once she knew I was wealthy, but she had been embarrassed by the reality of me when she believed I was ordinary. Alana loved the version of me who showed up to plug in power strips and tape extension cords to the floor. One Tuesday, as we walked out of the school together, snow beginning to fall in soft flakes around us, Alana slipped her hand into mine. "You know," she said, "the children do not talk about you like you are some genius entrepreneur. They say you are the patient guy who does not give up when something is broken." I laughed. "I can live with that," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Good," she answered, "because that is the person I fell for." In that simple sentence, in that ordinary walk through a school parking lot, I finally felt a sense of peace settle in my chest. I used to think hiding my wealth would help me find people who did not care about money at all. What I actually found was something more precise. The choice to live modestly did not magically filter out everyone with selfish motives. It did not protect me from disappointment or heartbreak. What it did was reveal where people anchored their respect. Serena anchored it in status, in visible markers, in the stories she could tell about who she was dating. Alana anchored it in consistency, in follow-through, in the way someone treated the least powerful person in the room. Alana has never seen my full investment portfolio, and she does not need to. She has seen me spend an entire afternoon sitting beside a child who kept deleting the same line of code by mistake. She has watched me research education policy late at night because I wanted to understand the barriers her students faced beyond the classroom walls. She knows I will show up every Tuesday whether my week is going brilliantly or falling apart. That is the man she chose. Not the headline, not the number, not the legend someone else wrote, but the ordinary, consistent version of me who kept showing up even when nobody was watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.